The time is, what time is it? 6 p.m. on September 30th or September 3rd, 2020. And I would like to call this meeting of the Growth Management Oversight Commission to order. In the interest of public health and safety and pursuant to Governor's Executive Order N2920, members of the Growth Management Oversight Commission and staff are participating in this meeting by teleconference. In accordance with the executive order, the public may view this meeting online, but not in council chambers. The city launched a virtual commenting portal, e-comment, that allows residents to comment and participate in the meeting from their own homes. You can find the link to e-comment at www.chulavistaca.gov/boards. Your comments must be received before I call for the close of the commenting period in order to be considered. After the commenting period is closed, I will announce a brief pause to allow the commissioners time to read any comments that may have been received. If you have any difficulty or need assistance with e-comment during the meeting, please contact the Secretary, Claudia Ramos, at cramos@chulavistaca.gov. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Chair Hooker.
Present.
Commissioner Alatorre.
Present.
Commissioner Caudillo.
Present.
Commissioner Juarez. I don't think she is on. Commissioner Lengyel said he would be on a little bit later today. Commissioner Strong.
Present.
And Commissioner Torres.
Present.
Okay, the first order of business is the consent calendar and approve the minutes. Do any commissioner have any comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Commissioner Strong. I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Commissioner Strong a motion by Commissioner Strong and a second by Commissioner, I think that was Torres.
Right.
Secretary, please conduct a roll call vote.
Okay, Chair Hooker, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Alatorre. Can you hear us, Commissioner Alatorre?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. How do you
Aye.
vote? Okay. Commissioner Caudillo.
Aye.
Commissioner Strong and Torres initiated the vote. So.
Okay, the August 20th, 2020 minutes have passed. Yes, by a vote of, what was that, 4-0?
5.
5. Okay. Public comments is the section on the agenda for members of the public to address the board on items that are not listed on the agenda. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final public comments. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure public comments appear. Did you start the timer?
Gabriel, will you please post the comment slide?
Okay. The comment period for the public comments is now closed. I did not see any public comments.
I did not receive any public comments via email.
Okay, thank you. The next item in the agenda is item number 2, the FY 2020 GMOC annual report and schedule. Kim, all yours.
Very good, thank you. And Gabriel, if you could please show the schedule slide. Excellent, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We touched on this a bit last time, and I just wanted to go over again what the fiscal year 2020 meeting schedule is looking like. So in 2 weeks, we will meet again, and we will review blank questionnaires. You might recall in the past, shortly after we did the joint workshop, we would meet together and review some blank questionnaires for the upcoming fiscal year annual report. The purpose for doing it back in the spring was that things were still fresh in our minds. And of course, since this has been an unusual year, we were unable to do that a few months ago. So we're going to do that in 2 weeks. And then we're calling it an abbreviated report because the questionnaires are going to be tapered down. Primarily, we're just looking for threshold compliance and don't plan to expand into a lot of the other areas because when we embark on comprehensive review, a lot of those topics will be addressed. Also, there won't be any presentations from the department heads regarding the specific topics. We'd also like to include a question about the COVID-19, how that has affected operations and potential response times or anything that we use to measure the current threshold standards. So that's what we'll do on the 17th. And then on the 5th of November, once we get those sent out to the departments for review, along with a updated growth forecast, I will review all the comments that have come in and summarize them into one report, which I would like to present to you on November 5th. And at that time, hopefully, everything will be clear, but if you have some questions or need follow-up on some of the responses provided by the various questionnaire folks that filled out the questionnaires, then we'll have a second meeting in November specifically to address those comments. And then in December, we'll have December 3rd, I'll present the staff presentation of the annual report, a draft version. This is typical of what we do in the past, we've done in the past, and what we did last year in preparation for a meeting with the Planning Commission and City Council in January. We'll try to finalize that report on the 17th of December and then take it to Planning Commission and City Council in a joint meeting on the 28th of January. Now, just to emphasize, this is specifically for the annual report. Concurrently, Kim Elliott is going to be leading the comprehensive review of the growth management program. So there may be a little overlap. For instance, in November, there may be some topics covered at that time along with the fiscal year 2020. But Kim will go over a schedule with you for that. So essentially, that's what we're trying to do with the report. And if you have any questions, please ask and I'll try to clarify.
So Kim, I guess I thought we were going to plan on 3 meetings per month, or is that the second schedule you're talking about?
Well, that may occur. I believe that Kim Elliott had some conversations with the clerk's office today about doing 3 meetings in October, but I don't think that's going to be feasible. Kim, do you want to chime in on that? You're on mute.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. It looks like for October, we can only do 2 meetings. So we'll just try and get done as much as we can in those. Other months, we may try and have additional, but that's what for September and October, we'll have the normal first and third Thursdays.
Okay. Do any other commissioners have any questions?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Torres. I just want to make sure that I understood what both Kim said. So we have the schedule for the abbreviated annual report, and thank you, Kim, for giving us that and the expectations. But then concurrently, we're also going to be conducting the comprehensive review, and based on what that's Kimberly Elliott said, as of right now, all we have, if you will, scheduled and we know of are the 2 meetings in October on the Thursdays of October. Beyond that, we don't have a set schedule as to when we're going to meet for the comprehensive review, correct?
I'll let Kim address that. Kim Elliott.
We can't hear you, Kim.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
I'm so sorry. My audio went out there for a minute, so I missed your question. Can you repeat it, please?
Oh, no problem. Is that I just want to make sure that I understood based on Kim's presentation, we're going to do the abbreviated annual report, and then she set out the schedule, which was in our agenda packet, okay? And then Kim, because we're going to do concurrently the comprehensive review as well. But as of today, the only set meetings we have for that comprehensive review are the 2 meetings in October that you just described. Beyond that, we don't have a set date and times. Is that correct?
Correct. So the 2 meetings in September and the 2 meetings in October.
The 2 meetings in September. So there's going to be 3 meetings in September.
No, so this is one of the meetings,
Okay,
and then we'll have another one
on the 17th.
on 17th, correct?
Okay, and then 2 meetings in October. Okay.
Correct. The first
That, and those
third.
are for the comprehensive review.
Yes, and as Kim said, during that meeting, she may also be presenting the questionnaires, but that'll
In
be,
September.
a separate.
Yeah, in the September meeting.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
I'll present the.
Okay, all right. I just want to
Go
make
ahead.
sure that
Sorry.
I heard what I thought I heard. Okay, thank you.
So Kimberly's, in the packet on page 8, I don't see the October meetings. I only see September, November, December, and January. In your slide, I thought there was an October, or did I miss that?
Is it below? Is it the denominator? Because you've got dates on the upper and the lower.
No, in the packet that was sent out, I only see September, November, December. I don't see anything about an October meetings. Then it goes into the housing elementary.
Oh, so during the month of October, Kim will be, that's when the departments will be responding to the questionnaires.
So we'll have no meetings for October then.
No, yes, we'll have 2 meetings. What is shown on the screen right now is the meeting schedule for when Kim's going to bring you items relating only to the FY 2020 report. So the month of November she doesn't show here because we won't be discussing the 2020 report. That will be the time when the departments are filling out the questionnaires. She'll get them back, and then in the first meeting in November, one of the agenda items will be to present the results of the questionnaires to you.
Okay, so can we get a complete calendar to show all meetings that are going to be scheduled for October, for all meetings that we're going to be scheduled? That way people can plan for them.
Sure, we'll do. We'll get that out to you.
Yeah, and we just wanted to clarify for you tonight what the report's schedule was. You know, just so that, because it is abbreviated, because it's going to be a little different, not having the different departments come in to speak specifically about the questionnaires. Just wanted you to see that.
Right, understand. I just think in the past, we've always had the complete schedule of all dates, and this one's just a little different, so
And you will get that.
it kind of threw me off there for a second.
No, you'll get that. We'll consolidate.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Yes.
do any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Okay, if not, I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow for public comments on any final comments on the item before the commission deliberates. As a reminder, please refresh your view on the screen to ensure new comments appear.
Will staff presenter please display the public comment and start the timer?
Chairman Hooker, if I might just make a few comments during the 2-minute time period. I just want to tee up the next agenda item. Last week, when I presented possible topics under the idea of having a new updated growth management plan, which is more focused on quality of life, I suggested that housing be a topic. And I think that's something you all discussed for many years, just looking back at some of the correspondence in the meetings. So I invited tonight Leilani Hines, who is the city's housing manager. She is in the middle of updating the city's housing element and has a lot of really good information I think will be helpful to us as we look at, or to help us kind of frame up how we want to look at housing in the city. And there's a lot of new state regulations that she'll tell you about as well.
Is this an open discussion? Because I did want to talk about this.
Yeah, after the 2-minute, we'll get into it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Well, maybe after Leilani's presentation, we could talk about it.
Yes.
Or under agenda item number 4, we can talk about it.
Okay, the commenting period for this action item is now closed. Have any commissioners have any comments? I did not see any comments.
I did not receive any via email.
Okay. The next action item is action item number 3, presentation of the housing elements update. Leilani Hines, all yours.
All right. And the ability to share my screen. So some of you may have heard this presentation before, but I'll try and go through it briefly and hit the highlights. So good evening, commissioners, staff, and everyone joining us this evening. Tonight, I wanted to provide you with that background in the context of the current legal and policy background we as a city are working within, give you an update of our efforts to update the housing element for the 6th planning cycle. We're beginning July 2021, ending in 2029. So as many of you have felt or know of, because you're either personally experiencing it, have a friend or family member who's experiencing this as well, is that we are in a current housing crisis. You may have an adult child who's asking you to come back home. 40% of all young Californians are living with their parents. You may be nearing retirement and thinking, is this a place, California, that you can still have the best quality of life, or would it be cheaper to live somewhere else? You may be concerned that there are more and more homeless people in the city, or maybe even in your neighborhood. So the state in the last few years has also stated that we've now hit a crisis mode when it comes to housing, and specifically has stated that we are robbing our future generations of the chance to call California home. We're stifling our economic opportunities and worsening poverty and homeless. And I preface that all because nearly 30 years ago, the state legislature actually declared that California had a lack of housing, and it was a critical problem. And in their opinion, that crisis was really due to the actions of local governments that limit approval of housing, increase cost of land, require high fees and exactions. So in response, in the last few years, they have stated specifically in some of their bills and legislation that housing is a statewide concern and no longer a municipal affair. As a result, in 2017, 15 pieces of housing legislation was passed, and it got worse from there. In 2018, 19 new laws, and in 2019, 20 plus new laws, and more are coming. I think we get a little bit of a reprieve in 2020 because they're more focused on bills like you just saw passed on September 1st, the tenant eviction moratorium. All of these laws are really aimed at increasing the supply and affordability of housing, strengthening the planning and production of housing for all economic levels, streamlining and reducing barriers, strengthening enforcement and accountability. That's been a really big one in the last few years. So I like to call these our heavy hitters that are trying to increase the supply and affordability of housing. I think the theme for all of these pieces of legislation that you'll see and hear about is that the state is looking to build more and more and more housing, not just affordable housing, but housing in general, and as fast as we can get them permitted as possible. So to increase the supply, we're looking at laws that require incentives and relief from regulatory standards through the state's favorite program, density bonus. Making surplus lands now of all public entities must be made available for affordable housing and not used for economic purposes. Calls for the replacement like for like of any lower priced housing that's demolished within the city. And then providing certainty in the development process by outlining a vesting process for projects and locking in timelines for approval. SB 330 was the latest bill that became effective in January 1st, 2020. A lot of these requirements are coming from that bill particularly. And for the stick approach, the state has taken a heavy hand at enforcement and planning. One of these is the Housing Accountability Act. This act was actually enacted in the 1980s, but amended significantly in 2017 to put more teeth into the law. It requires that projects be reviewed by objective written standards only. The only reason a residential project can be denied is for public health and safety issues that cannot be mitigated in any other way. The requirements to deny what they term an affordable housing development are even more stringent. There are more findings that would be required. For planning purposes, the city must ensure that we have plans that have adopted density and development, that those remain in place, providing capacity for development. So density levels are now frozen and in effect from 2018. The city can no longer downsize properties. And then if a parcel of land was designated within a prior housing element as a site with capacity to meet the housing needs of the city, or what we call the regional housing needs allocation, that property must be developed at the density the city designated it could, or if it's not developed that way, the city has a responsibility to make up that difference or the units lost on another parcel of land. This is a law that we call no net loss in housing. In SB 330 as well, another piece of that legislation that really directly affects the Growth Management Oversight Commission is there a specific term that says the city shall not enact development policies, standards, or conditions that would have the following effect of imposing a moratorium or similar restriction or limitation on housing development, including mixed-use development within the city, other than to specifically protect against an imminent threat to the health and safety of persons. And if we do choose to impose a moratorium, that moratorium needs to be submitted to and received approval from the State Housing and Community Development Department. So that's a piece of legislation that became effective January 1st of this year that I think directly affects the work that you're doing here. So all in all, when 2017 came around, really the Governor Newsom's policy was, he stated he wanted to see 3.5 million dwelling units by 2025, or a 25% increase in the building permit level activity we have been seeing. He wanted to see barriers that local jurisdictions were putting in place, that those were eliminated, such as cost of local processing and fees. He also took the carrot approach of providing funding, SB2 funds, or our sustainability grants, and for housing production, talking again about funding, restarting redevelopment, the surplus lands, and then for sticks, the planning processes and more oversight to HCD. One of the things that I did not mention with the Housing Accountability Act is there are a lot of penalties there if each city chooses to deny a project without making the proper findings. There are economic or financial penalties there. So all of these laws really play into what we're doing right now of our housing element. We are updating the housing element, which is really our strategic plan for housing growth over the next 10 years. It provides our policies and programs that guide future housing growth, identifies the city's regional share of housing by income category, and then looks at the land that we have available currently that can accommodate all of the needs that we've been tasked to accommodate for and build for. So the components of the housing element, first is our housing vision. What would our city look like and feel like if we met all of our goals? And then our housing landscape is really, what are our housing needs? Who are the people that we are trying to serve and who do not have their housing needs met currently? And then the box that we work within, how do we try to build for these needs when we've got laws that might be in place, restrictions on land available? And then lastly, what is that action plan? What is that strategy that's going to get us to that housing vision? And currently right now, we're in that mode of determining what that vision is and determining the strategies to get there. So a little background on RHNA, or the Regional Housing Needs. This is something that, again, we do not have control over as a local jurisdiction. This is something that is dictated by the state and is in the legislation. When they talk about regional housing needs and how they figure out how many new houses we need to build for, what they look at are these factors, specifically that housing gets allocated in an equitable manner from city to city, from area to area, that we're promoting infill development and protecting resources, that we're increasing the variety of mix and types of housing, and that we're locating housing near the jobs, that there's that critical jobs housing relationship. And new for this planning cycle is what we call affirmatively furthering fair housing, and probably even more important in the political environment that we're in right now. Factors that cannot be considered when looking at RHNA and growth our existing zoning and growth limits, our past failure to meet RHNA, or that we've got a stable population and we feel like we're not going to go. So for the sixth cycle for the San Diego County region, we are tasked with providing 171,686 new housing units in this sixth cycle. Chula Vista gets a big chunk of that as one second largest city of about 11,105 units over this next planning period. The majority of that, or about 44% of that, or 41% of that, is in what we term the very low income and the low income categories. So how did we do in the last cycle? Most jurisdictions don't do really, really well unless you've got a RHNA obligation of maybe 10 units. For us, we have nearly 13,000 units, and you can see from the chart here that we are running a deficit. We do extremely well when it comes to the above moderate, but not very well when it comes to the very low and the low income population groups. And that's pretty standard for most jurisdictions. So in order to address that RHNA obligation, the state has said, what are you going to do? What strategies and incentives are you going to offer in order to be in compliance with the state law, to meet that RHNA obligation, to do it within a reasonable time frame? And due to the critical need for housing throughout the state HCD now has the ability and the authority, we talked about accountability, to determine at any point in time that the city is out of compliance with its housing element, and then refer the jurisdiction to the state attorney general's office. So if we put something in our housing element and we say we're going to do it, and particularly if it's required by law and we don't do it, the state can then determine that we're out of compliance. So some of the things that we know we're going to have to do within the new housing element is we have to rethink growth management policies and programs because of SB 330. We know that we're going to need to amend our zoning code, specific plans, and other documents that are going to accommodate special needs housing, like the no barrier navigation centers and emergency shelters for the homeless, accessory dwelling units, multiple revisions to the state density bonus law. There's a new revision this year. That was one of the pieces of legislation that did pass this last month. Design standards that need to be objective and not subjective. And then again, the new affirmatively furthering fair housing. And then as well, a new law as well, that we need to make diligent efforts to remove any constraints that we as a local jurisdiction have towards the production of housing. So I just wanted to go over with you some of the key findings that we learned and we heard from the community and just doing the data research. So based upon SANDAG growth forecasts, we're anticipated to grow by 40% from 2010 to 2050. As shown in these maps, the growth has occurred primarily in those areas east of I-805, no surprise there. And in future years, completing out in Otay Ranch villages 8, 9, and 10 in the university area, those darker green areas on the lower map. But we're also starting to see pickup of growth and development in the west side. So the darker the green, the more growth we're seeing. The affirmatively furthering fair housing component of the housing element becomes really key for us. This map shows our median income households, and 44% of our population is below the median income. They're considered low income. The darker the green, the higher the income. The lighter the green, the less the income is. And so you can see just from this map, from a geographical standpoint, that those that are lower income are all living west of the I-805. This is also not surprising. The darker the blue on the top map shows the percentage of home ownership rates. So we've got a lot of home ownership rates out in the east side of town. When you look at the second map, it shows the renter population. The darker the blue, the more renter occupied housing. So on our west side, there's a lot of rental housing. And not surprisingly, based upon the maps you've seen there, when you're looking at this map, the darker the red, the more people are paying for housing. So on our west side, where 44% of our low-income population is living, that's where they're facing the greatest housing cost burden, where they're paying more than 30% of their income towards housing costs. And in actuality, 44% of our low-income renters are paying more than 50% or half of their income towards housing costs. So our citywide themes here is that we're all growing. California is growing, Chula Vista is growing. We're a pretty diverse community in terms of our household size, our income, our ethnicity. We have unmet housing needs. Nothing's really affordable to our lower income households. They're overpaying at the expense of their other needs. And home ownership comes with choices and sacrifice here for many in our community. So we continue to hear that where you live, whether it's west or east of the I-805, makes a difference. We still continue to be a tale of two cities with new housing stock in our master plan communities, predominantly single family housing. Those with higher incomes live east of I-805, and lower income households live west of I-805, where housing is older and more affordable. And that's nothing new to cities. That's pretty common theme. But as a new goal of the housing element process, as a city, our strategies and the way we plan for growth, that we have to look at ways to foster more inclusive communities and disparities in housing and access to opportunity. So given those demographics, we really have started to craft and propose some goals. Given our demographics, given the new laws. In the previous cycle, we had 3 housing element goals. For this cycle, we are proposing 4 goals and really pulling out the affordable housing component, that not only are we looking to facilitate construction and provision of housing to meet our diverse community, but that we really need to focus on the creation of opportunities for affordable housing, particularly in what we call vulnerable areas, or areas that may be seeing growth where we have lower income folks living but don't want to price them out of that market. And then in areas of opportunity, that those areas of opportunity be more inclusive of all different economic groups. And then lastly is education and outreach, really trying to promote the programs that are available, to promote information, to ensure that those that benefit from programs are part of the decision-making process. So some of the programs that we are throwing out there in terms of promoting housing to create safe and livable, sustainable neighborhoods, those relate to just maintaining neighborhoods, maintaining housing, enforcing our code enforcement and building codes, really aligning our policies with local greenhouse gas reduction strategies, that we're looking at reducing energy and consumption and sustainable building practices. For goal 2, the facilitating and the construction of housing, these programs are really going to be focused more on what the law is telling us that we should be doing. So really keeping up and monitoring growth as it is occurring, matching it to what our RHNA obligations are, making sure that we are monitoring for no net loss, that housing development is being built at the densities that they have been outlined in the various planning documents and zoning ordinances and specific plans that we have out there. So really focused on monitoring development and making sure we're trying to hit that RHNA objective. And then again, because we're trying to reduce barriers, really identifying and implementing permit processing improvements, trying to incentivize and provide that carrot approach to development, and particularly for those types of developments that we really want to see, which are affordable infill projects or sustainable projects. And then making sure that those who are vulnerable within our community with special needs, single parents, disabled, elderly, students, veterans, that they are provided a housing choice that really meets their needs. And then for affordable housing, again, because there are laws related to demolition and replacement of housing, we're going to look at programs that do just that, to avoid displacement, to call for the replacement of housing. Some other things that we'll be looking at that will probably be our balanced communities policy. Right now, we have a balanced communities policy that calls for 5% low, 5% moderate for 50 units or more. That policy is probably not going to get us to that RHNA obligation. So taking a look at that policy and what it should be, that'll probably be a program that we as housing and planning will be working on in the next few years. And then we are a housing authority. We do continue to finance and provide our own local housing dollars towards construction of affordable housing. And then goal 4, really just getting out there in the community and promoting the products and the programs that we have available and having the community be a part of that. And so next steps, we've got a very aggressive schedule. We had requested that the state extend the housing element deadline based upon the current pandemic we are in. That has been denied. And so we are still on schedule to have our document to the state by April 15th. We are trying to get this document completed and to council by the end of the year and to state HCD to start their review process in January of next year. So with that, if you have any questions or comments, myself and Scott Donahue and our principal planner in the planning department or planning division are available to discuss any of your thoughts that you may not be able to express tonight or would further like to discuss with us. We're both available. We also have a housing element update website on the city website that you can check out, where we have our presentations, what we're doing, and an FAQ about the housing element process. And we'll be publishing pieces of that draft document as they become available for you. So with that, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Do I have any commissioners with questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Torres. I have 2 questions, but one I'll reserve for agenda item 4, but relative to Leilani's presentation. And first of all, Leilani always gives great presentations. They're so thorough and well illustrated. So I want to commend her again. But I want to understand one thing, Leilani, and that is with regard to Senate Bill 330.
Yes.
Are you informing us, because I saw too on your schedule that the housing element update will be coming before the Planning Commission in November.
Yes.
So I want to ask you just a quick question. If a housing project comes before the Planning Commission that entails rezoning industrial land parcels to accommodate a housing project, are you saying under SB 330 that the Planning Commission could not deny that project to maintain its industrial zoning or industrial parcels? Is that what you're saying?
No, sir. Absolutely not. So it really deals with land that's been identified as residential land in the housing element and making sure that capacity is available. I will say if you look at it purely as a housing perspective, right, and you're trying to meet RHNA goals, the state would probably tell you, yeah, sure, if you've got industrial land, turn it over and make it housing, housing, housing. From a city perspective, that's not always the best policy either. We're trying to accommodate those local needs, but there's nothing in state housing element law that would speak directly from industrial or non-residential land being turned over to residential, unless we had identified that parcel of land to be redeveloped into residential, but that's not likely. We did not do that.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you, Lulu.
Sure.
Lenny, I got one question. So I see a lot of stuff about the housing, but what about the support infrastructure? Police, fire, shopping centers, roads. What's the city's
Yeah.
plan to support all this housing?
So that's quite a conundrum. Yes, absolutely. State law just tells us to build, 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 but doesn't provide us with how we meet all that demand for all that new growth. I think the state would say that it is making available dollars for infrastructure, and really to get state infrastructure dollars or anything that's coming out of SAMDAG or the state, you really need to be on top of your housing element progress and your RENA objectives in order to qualify for those. But yeah, it does not address those other types of needs that come when you build more houses.
So does the city have a plan how to address that?
I don't feel that I'm qualified to address that issue. I am going to assume, of course we do. I don't know if there's other staff members on here who'd like to try to address that question. But it's always been the policy of the city that we should be able to accommodate for that growth. And I think that's what you all as a Growth Management Commission are trying to do. But again, those types of thresholds, do you have enough fire or police to meet your demand for housing? And do you deny a project based upon that? I don't know that you necessarily could.
Right. So that's basically where I'm going with it. I mean, if understand the law, understand, the demand, but if the community can't support that demand or doesn't have a plan on how to support the roads, the fire, the police, the infrastructure, what is that, how do they develop that plan and who has cog of that plan? Understand it may not be you, but can we, take an action to find out who that is and have them come address that?
Chairman Hooker, Kim Elliott, yes, to answer your question, we can have some more conversation about this. But there's the other state law that every project is beholden to is the California Environmental Quality Act. So that's not changing. The city's policies on requiring infrastructure concurrent with the need and for developers to mitigate their impacts, that's not changing. So these developers will still be paying fees and building infrastructure to support their projects as they always have.
Exactly. So if I can just chime in with what Kimberly said, is so that the chair understands, when we have projects come before the Planning Commission, all of that, what you're concerned about, well, not all of it, but to a great extent, a lot of that is addressed in the presentation to us. Because like staff says, all developers, for major projects are required to pay what's called a public facilities impact fee and various other fees that help create the infrastructure, the capital infrastructure, I should say, needed for those housing developments. And that's what helps finance, for example, the new fire stations that we got. Those were paid from those fees, and so on and so forth. Park fees help pay for a lot of the new parks that are coming out in East Chula Vista and the renovations in West Chula Vista. So a lot of that information is provided to the Planning Commission when we get a large housing and or mixed use project coming before us.
Right. And I understand that. I guess my concern is, there's fees, but as we've seen, they build a fire station, but the city got to man the fire station. They build more people, so they got to get the personnel for the police. I mean, I don't know if those developers fund an FTE, for manning those positions. So
No, they don't. They don't fund an FTE. What they do is they pay for various fees to house for example, fire stations. But that's what Measure A and Measure P is all about. So that's what those funds are used to help accommodate the growth within the city of Chula Vista. But those are salient points that we need to address in our next agenda item.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Yes, I do, Commissioner. This is Commissioner Cadillo.
Go ahead.
Yes. So Leilani, can you just expand a little bit on SB 3030 or 330 on the demo and replacement of housing occupied by low income like for like?
So the demolition and replacement obligation, the law specifically states that if you have rent control or rent restriction within your community, that you are obligated when a project comes in and they are proposing, say, there are 5 units on the project, on the property, and they're going to build 20 new units, that if you're demoing 5 units and those 5 units were occupied by lower income households, that you need to provide a replacement like for like for those 5 units. What we have heard from our outside legal counsel related to this is because in years past, there is now statewide rent control. So now if you are a project that's covered under the statewide rent control, you are subject to this demo and replacement obligation.
Right. So, but now on any given project, let's say a new project that's coming before the city, let's say an apartment complex, isn't a percentage of those units have to fall under low income?
Yes.
So is that the same thing, or is it just a different angle?
It's different. So we have a balanced communities policy that handles new construction, but that's only for 50 units or more. This is similar to that. So if you have a 20 unit project, you're demoing 5 units, 5 of those units were, say, 2-bedroom units, and all of them were occupied by lower income households, you'd have to provide 5 2-bedroom units and restrict them for affordability to low income households as part of your project.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in essence a form of an inclusionary policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
Yes, this is Commissioner Alatorre. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Leilani. Great presentation, by the way. But I was stumped when you were talking about a specific item. And so I just want a little clarification of the process in which you determine what are surplus lands in the city. And if you could give us an example of one, please.
So any land that's deemed surplus where the city no longer has a use for that property for normal city purposes. Now, and this applies not only to cities, but water authorities, any other public agency. If you determine that you no longer need that property to provide for a public purpose or part of your operations, and you're going to set forth and dispose of that property, you have to make that property available first to affordable housing developers and see if anybody wants to take that piece of property and develop it. But first you would have to declare that you no longer needed it.
So this can be property that's already been developed and zoned for like commercial industrial use?
Yes.
Is that a process that goes through the planning commission, through council?
I believe it's a council declaration that land is deemed surplus.
Is there any recent examples of that?
We have not disposed of property currently, but any property that we have, so say for example,
the old yard down by F and E?
Yes, yes. If the city declared that we no longer needed that property for a public purpose or for our operations, etc., then that would need to be available first to affordable housing developers. And then if no one was interested in it, then it would go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners with comments or questions? Okay, I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final questions on the items before deliberation. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh your view on the screen to ensure new comments appear.
Will staff presenter please display the public comment slide and start the timer?
The comment period for this item is now closed. I did not see any comments.
I did not receive any comments via email.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 4, the growth management program comprehensive review. Kimberly Elliott.
Thank you, Chairman Hooker. Claudia, if you could put those last 2 slides up from last week's presentation. Perfect. Okay, what I thought I'd do this week, I went over this fairly quickly last meeting, and I'd like to go over each proposed topic, and if it's okay with you, Chairman Hooker, get some more input or any thoughts or ideas you have about these topics. The first one, public safety, which is one you've been doing separately with fire and emergency medical services as one topic, and the police as another. So Kim and I plan to meet with the fire chief and police chief and get their input on what they think would be good measurements, maybe in addition or to what do you call it when you, the rates when they go to certain houses, and you guys know what that is. Blanket on that. But In addition, I was thinking other topics under public safety or metrics we might want to look at are crime rates, where police hasn't necessarily met the response times. That's what I'm looking at. The response times, but the city of Chula Vista has a fairly low crime rate. So I'd like to kind of explore those different ideas with both chiefs and get their input. Does anybody else have other thoughts on public safety?
I think, from a fire or from a police perspective, really, understand we have a low crime rate, but I'd be interested to see what type of crimes would be happening both in West and East Chula Vista, and what are those statistics? What are they looking like? I mean, I hear a lot of stuff about a lot of drugs in East Lake. Is that a true factor? What the real statistics and some of that stuff. And for fire, what are the types of fire that are being, are they more medical and not fire? And the EMS, is this the new EMS that they were going to take over from AMR, or is this just medical services as part of the fire?
So you've always had emergency medical services as a topic. I understand that the city has voted to pull that in-house. So I think that's a good topic to look at, just with new, fresh eyes, is how is this going to change the provision of services. I know the fire department provided a lot of data to the council when this decision was made.
Okay. I think somebody else had a comment.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rodney.
Okay, so in terms of response times, because I know there had been a couple different programs in place over the last year. One has to do with the police, the drones. Is there going to be a new category about the drones in relation to response times, or is it just going to be calculated into existing response times? And then with the fire department too, now we have the roving fire. So are we going to try to track that to see how well they're doing? I know they're doing it now, but how are they doing that? Is it all being incorporated into the regular response times, or is it being categorized?
Those are really good questions, and I'd love to pose those to the chiefs. It'd be interesting to know statistically how this drone program is working, and it may not be increasing response times, but from the presentations I've heard and you've all heard at council, it's really helping resolve situations more quickly and gives police eyes on the situation before they get there. So we can look at that for sure. And I do plan to have the chiefs come meet with you as well when they're available.
Okay, and then also too, with the police department, they initiated the new GPS. I can't remember the actual appropriate name. In the cars, and that was helping too with the response. So all these new changes. So I'm just wondering how we're tracking that, or how they're measuring it, see how really effective it is, or are they just incorporating it into normal?
Yeah, great question. We will look into that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on public safety?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Torres, but I'll wait for the other commissioners to ask questions. If nobody else does.
Kim, if I could just chime in. Oh, sorry.
Does any commissioner have a question? Because if not, then I want to talk about something real quickly.
It's actually more of a proposition.
Okay, well, please do, and then mine is kind of like a proposition too, so please, and then I'll chime in afterwards.
Okay, so my proposition is adding another bullet point under public safety, one that kind of incorporates the previous three, but also helps see a bigger picture. I'd like to see something in terms of emergency preparedness, focusing on the response from fire, police, emergency medical in cases of natural disasters, flooding, earthquakes, natural, and especially with what's going on right now with the virus and the COVID, helping to better coordinate our assets in the city, and in a way where the public is better informed. So, yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that.
That is a great quality of life topic, and I had put it underneath resilient cities, but we can pull it up to public safety. I think it might make more sense there.
Okay, this is Member Torres. Actually, that was one of the things, but I want to ask a question. Is that is staff going to be going to the Police Department Citizen Advisory Committee and or the Measure A Citizen Oversight Committee to get their input relative to this one area, the quality of life topic? And the reason why I'm asking that question is that I think that they have a vital part to play in the comprehensive review or of these metrics or thresholds, and I think they would actually, their input I think will help push the GMOC to maybe take a different look at how at its existing thresholds and its existing metrics. I think those two committees, I think, are vital in this whole process of a comprehensive review, and I would hope that the GMOC would support that. And I wanted to know whether or not staff has any inclination one way or another in that regard.
Yes, Kim, I think we did discuss that early on, is going to the Measure A and Citizens Oversight Committee. So we will calendar that with them. That's a great suggestion.
Thank you. Yeah, because we've been focusing so much on call for service and response times. I think if we're talking about everything under the prism, if you will, of quality of life, then there's much more to public safety than what the GMOC has been considering in years past. And I think those two advisory committees could definitely play a part of that.
Great suggestion.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, of course, we do have two commissioners who are on those committees as representatives, and you meet quarterly, is that right? Commissioner Alator and Angel? I think they meet quarterly, and so yeah, we can share information as well with them. They can take information back to the committees.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on public safety? So housing, you just heard Leilani's presentation. What are your thoughts about housing? I don't know if she's still on, but the staff does provide annual reports to council on a variety of issues related to housing. So Leilani, if you're still on, maybe you can discuss those.
Sure. So by law, again, we are required to report on an annual basis on our progress in meeting the housing element. We have a very prescribed form that's given to us by the state that includes all building permits that have been issued, all planning projects that are in process, and then they're tracking those. And then where we have no net loss, we're also reporting on no net loss. So that's done. We have to submit it by April 1st of every year. So we typically go to the council in March. So that's something we're already doing. And so that report can always be made available to the GMOC. It actually is required to also be placed on our housing website. So our annual report is also there as well.
Claudia, you listed several goals. Do you address how you are progressing in meeting those goals in the housing element?
Yes. So you actually have to report on every single goal, policy, and program that you have in the element, and report what progress has been made to date, as well as just, it's a unit count issue as well. Units by bedroom size, rental, owner occupied, how many bedrooms, and at what income category. It's a very thorough report.
And as you've been out to the community and discussing housing issues, what are you hearing from the citizens and what their big concerns and needs are?
So it's funny. I think that we are hearing a lot from the advocacy groups, and I think we heard it from the Planning Commission, that there is definitely a need. We said that there were 44% of our population is low income. We have a RENA goal of 41% towards lower income. So that's definitely going to be a big part of the housing element, is trying to provide affordable housing. When we did our housing element survey, though, what we heard from folks is that even though they can't afford a home, they all want to own a home. And so everybody's still striving to be able to purchase and be a homeowner and be part of the community. If it could be at a cheaper rate instead of $800,000 or $900,000 in the community, they'd love that. I think we all would love that. So affordability, even in a home ownership standpoint, is probably something that they would like to see.
Thank you. Any input or thoughts from the commissioners? If not, staff will continue to work with Leilani and her team on what might be good metrics for this commission to look at for provision of housing. The next topic is transportation and land use, and you got a very detailed presentation last week on the city's new transportation guidelines, and which is now requires that all CEQA analysis be based on vehicle miles traveled or VMT versus level of service. So the next step in our program on that is to come up with a mitigation program for significant VMT impacts. So if a project is generating more VMT than a certain percentage of the city average, then there's going to need to be some mitigation. And so they can either revise the project, or we might have a fee, we might have programs like transportation demand management plans. So that's in the works. We're really just, now that the program's been approved by council, July 1st, we are just starting work on the mitigation program. I don't know the timeline on that, but it might be helpful for us to get a little further down the road on that, and bring that back to you before we dive too deep into transportation. But I would love your thoughts on transportation, land use issues, smart growth. I think before in the current plan, it's just called traffic, and there's really not and you've been looking at level of service, and there's really not a land use component, and they really go hand in hand.
Kimberly, this is Member Torres, and I apologize because I have myself on mute. I want to go back to the housing just real quickly, if I may. I would like to, and it kind of dovetails on what you said, Kimberly. If I may, I would like to suggest that Lalani actually work with the Housing Advisory Commission and put together a presentation to the GMOC of potential thresholds and performance metrics, and using the housing element at the update as a framework, if you will, to do that. Because unless Lalani objects, is that because she said that she already submits annual reports already to the council. So why regurgitate that in a GMOC report? Rather, why not look at the housing element update and use that as a framework with all the mandates that are required of the city, and formulate in consultation with the Housing Advisory Commission the actual thresholds and performance metrics that are reflective of the housing element. I mean, that to me would seem much more germane and much more relevant and useful as part of a GMOC comprehensive review. I mean, I'd like to hear her thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I would agree with you as well. Using the housing element and the programs and policies that are developed, and maybe looking at those thresholds and some of the things we're already reporting. Yeah, absolutely, we can do that.
Hello, this is Commissioner Strong. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So just back on transportation, yes. I was wondering if we could add something. I think I may have saw something on safety, transportation safety. I don't know if this should go here or in the public safety area, but I think it should go here. So I'm thinking about things around the safety of the street, the roads, the walkways, the pedestrian deaths. Like, what do we see in that area, and do we have enough safety measures in place as we're building these transportation routes? And are we looking at our old transportation routes to make sure that those are safe? So something around transportation safety. And if that's already included in that, great. But I think we should definitely add a bullet point for that.
That's a great comment. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. This is Commissioner Cadillo, if I may.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. Commissioner Strong has a very good point. I had actually mentioned something like this a couple years ago, because I was on the safety, which it used to be the Traffic and Safety Commission, the Safety Commission. Years, and the Safety Commission at the city, that's an amazing commission, but they don't see a lot of the things that they should be seeing. But my question is that maybe they should be involved as well, because pertains with traffic. I would say probably 80% of the issues that came before our commission were dealing with kind of a traffic issue that is related to safety, like putting always stop signs and putting in medians and so forth. So I'm you know, and I said that back then a couple years ago in one of the meetings, that it was interesting because when I got on GMOC, how there's a lot of things that kind of crossed over, but we were never. So maybe this is a good time to get the safety commission involved. Just an idea. That's it.
You know, this is Commissioner Strong. That's a really good point. I would be interested to see what these other commissions are covering. I don't know if, you know, or maybe staff can kind of do that analysis to see, you know, what those commissions are covering and how they overlap with what we're doing. You know, and then maybe that'll help inform the thresholds and some of the different topics that we're covering on this commission. Because that's, you know, that's a really good point. If there's a gap somewhere, we want to make sure we fill that gap, whether it's with the safety commissioner with us. So.
Kim Elliott, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Did we lose Kim?
I see that she's still on here, but I can't hear her. Kimberly, can you hear?
Maybe she needs to replug that earphone
Yeah.
into her Apple laptop or wherever she's using, or desktop.
I just sent her a text. Hopefully her phone is nearby.
Okay, I see her back again. Kimberly, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Okay, now I think you're on mute.
Kim, now you're on
Can you
mute.
hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Now you're not.
Sorry, I think my
Yeah.
cell died. So sorry. Anyway, connected, I don't know how much you heard, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the presentations from last meeting on Parks and Rec and libraries and what they've been doing during COVID to serve the communities without physical buildings. And under civic engagement was one I thought indicated a great engaged city, but that may not be something that's very easy to measure. So we may not want to look at that. Arts and culture is vital to great cities. I think we see in most surveys. And then under education, we have primarily looked at the public schools' ability to really house new students. And I think there's a lot more meaningful things we can look at under education, such as graduation rates, the maybe diversity of education types and access to education. and graduation wage, but also the number of students going on to college, that sort of thing. So would love your thoughts, input on any ideas under connected communities.
I would also like to add something on the education about distant learning. I know my grandson and my granddaughter are staying with us for a while, and I've gotten firsthand of how Chula Vista and Sweetwater are doing distant learning, and I'm not too impressed. But if we could have something, to address that and at least talk about it.
I think one of the, as you know, the city doesn't run the schools, so our influence is somewhat limited, but I think where we can look at this is what is Chula Vista doing. We've, in May, the council authorized several $100,000 for Wi-Fi hotspots for students, and they have passed a new plan for, so what do we call it? To close the digital divide. So they've adopted a digital equity and inclusion plan with the goal of not having this big divide where only wealthy people have access to the internet. So
right,
I think that's something.
And I think, and that's fine, but I think, like, one thing that I witnessed this week, or last week, I guess, my grandson, 8 years old, started second grade, and they told my granddaughter, who's a freshman, to basically do independent study because they didn't want to overwhelm their network because the elementary schools were starting. And just watching the video and connecting into their network, what's their network infrastructure and how are they upgrading that or maintaining it? Because it looks very, very slow. Nothing that we'll be able to do with that. It'll be more of, what's their plan on as, we have these requirements for, growth on housing, if you have more distant learning or we have more pandemics or whatever the reason that, how's their infrastructure for doing this remote learning going to support that with the expansion of the housing?
Okay.
Well,
anything else?
This is member Torres. So let me ask the commission and then Kim Vanderby how her thoughts on this. Remembered in our deliberations of the last cycle, I brought up the issue about Mello-Roos because one of the questions that we had in our existing metrics is about facilities, right? Because this is all about growth management, right? And the funding for facilities, for future facilities, right, to accommodate that growth. And the question that I asked was more pertinent in that, does the city want to start asking about Mello-Roos as it relates to the community facility districts? Because, the city gets CFD funds, so does the school districts, okay? And people who, I'm assuming all of us are fully aware, is that Sweetwater in particular has been using its Mello-Roos up to 80 now, under recent legislation, will now be eligible to use up to 85% of its Mello-Roos to meet its monthly payroll, okay, its monthly cash flow. And so that being said, how much money is left over for the schools, for school development, for school improvement? What's going on with those remaining sums of money? Now, does the city want to go down this road and start asking those similarly relevant questions, yes or no?
I had not heard that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that was, yeah. Mr. Shirey, I think you were at that meeting when that topic came up.
Yeah, hi, this is Mike. I don't really recall what was discussed.
Does that sound familiar to you?
I don't really recall what was discussed at the meeting, but this is something that's
Oh, okay.
it's a high level policy issue for the city manager and the city council. If staff wants to bring something like that forward to them to discuss, that's where it would be discussed.
That's fine with me. If staff wants to ask, the city manager doesn't want to include that type of question as a metric under education, because it's definitely a topic worth discussing. So I'm fine with that. Thank you, council.
You're welcome.
Anything else under this topic? Claudia, could you go to the next slide, please? So I included a topic called resiliency. Not sure that's the right title, but I think we talked earlier about moving emergency preparedness under public safety. We can do that. And we've heard several times that you want to discuss economic development. On that topic, what I'd like to do is we of course will have discussions with the economic development director, but I'd like to hear from you what you're interested in, what you think is important from a quality of life standpoint for this commission to look at. Some of the things I've seen.
Does any other commissioners have a point? Because if not, then I'll just make a quick point.
Go ahead.
If I may, is that similarly with regard to housing, and I'm glad you're going to approach the ED director. My thought was, and you can ask the ED director about this, is that the Economic Development Department puts forth a work plan, okay? And on the city's website is the current 2019-20 work plan. And I think that work plan, which also has 4 strategic focus areas, okay, in that plan, okay? Those 4 strategic areas, and more specifically, the one that pertains to economic development, I think should, again, serve as the framework in the construction of the threshold and the performance metrics. I mean, it's pretty much there. I mean, as I had indicated before, I had done my own independent research and come up with a bunch of, or not a bunch of, but several performance metrics. But I thought, why should I be doing this when it's already in a work plan that the city has on file, and that could serve as the framework for the necessary thresholds and performance metrics. So I would suggest that staff work with the ED director and visiting those documents, and then come up with something to present to the GMOC.
Okay. We can do that.
Also,
and
I have a comment. Yeah, can we submit, because I've been actually thinking a lot about economic development lately, probably for the last 6 months, actually. Can we submit some of our comments or bullet points, via email and not just tonight?
I will let Mike Shirey, our legal counsel, respond to that. Mike, the question is,
I got it. Yes, Commissioner, you may submit comments, but just submit them to the commission secretary. Do not copy any other commissioner. And then the secretary will then take that up with staff, and staff can determine what to do with it.
Okay. All right.
So that would be to Claudia.
Okay.
You had fiscal as one of the items previously. I don't know if you want to continue to look at this. My understanding is it's somewhat of a regurgitation of another document that's prepared. So we'll have your thoughts on this as well.
Are you saying that that's covered someplace else, or?
I believe so. I believe, and Kim, maybe you can address this on fiscal.
Yeah, a significant portion of the, sure, a significant portion of the responses in the questionnaires that we send out have information directly from the budget. So it is kind of redundant. It's something that's already presented to council, for budget approval, and to present it again in this format is, sort of a regurgitation.
So are you saying that the financial report we get would be rolled up into individual questionnaires?
I think what Kim is saying is the information that you get in that questionnaire.
I think that,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Kim.
Yes, you were exactly what I was going to say, is that it's currently in the questionnaires that we send out to them. The threshold standard requires a report on the diff fees, and also it requires that PFFPs be approved prior to development. And so in other mechanisms, those thresholds essentially are being met. The diff report comes out in the budget, and before a project is approved, a SPA plan or anything else it requires, the PFFP would not, get approval unless that was completed.
This is Commissioner Strong. So are you saying that basically, so we don't have any thresholds that we're looking at for this report, for the finance? We basically are looking at aspects of that report within the threshold reports of the other departments, because we're not necessarily taking a look at the budget saying, okay, you guys need to meet this threshold for retirement, need to meet this threshold for, fiscal stability or anything like that. We're just basically saying, this is an informational session for us. Do we want to keep it? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what it's been in the past. If you want to look at it differently, we can. It's been focused on the fiscal impact of new development. So I think that's why you've been looking at the development impact fee programs and the public facilities financing plans. So if there's a different, go ahead.
I like the way you said that as far as the fiscal impact of the development plans. So if we structure it around that, like what is the fiscal impact of the developments, the safety, all these different changes that we're doing to maintain growth. If we're looking at fiscal impact in that way, and our financial staff are presenting it in that way, and not necessarily the entire budget picture, which is helpful to see, but maybe what we should be focusing on as a commission is the fiscal impact of those programs that are impacting the budget significantly that we're supposed to be looking at.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea.
That's a good point, Commissioner Strong.
Okay.
So I got a question.
Sure.
So this is Commissioner Alatorre. So we're talking about these different points of sustainability, health, resiliency. That really is a hot bullet point, that fiscal one. So I was just curious, since we're moving emergency preparedness, couldn't we move some of these others into these other areas and maybe even rename this instead of resiliency, something to do with fiscal?
Sure.
No, because economic development is not simply a fiscal issue. It's way beyond that.
Well, it's a money matters situation. I mean, it could all fall under that. I mean, we're talking money.
No, but economic development involves jobs, it involves land use, it involves a whole metric of stuff that one specifically, it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. I appreciate what Commissioner Strong said. I think that hits it on the nail with regard to fiscal management, is looking at that more circumspect relative to DIF, the development impact fees. How much money are all the projects generating DIF, and how are those monies being used to support the necessary infrastructure to support all the housing and so on and so forth? Tie it in that way with regard to DIF fees, and that is, that includes public facilities. I can't remember the nomenclature, but the park fees, all of that, I think, looking at it from that perspective, I think neatly fits into the whole issue of the GMOC and then this topic resiliency. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. And then I wasn't sure where to put this, but it seems like innovation has been an important topic in the city, and there's a whole smart city plan. So curious your thoughts on that. I had seen it under some other cities, other lists of quality of life topics. As a city that's constantly innovative, is a city that's providing a good quality of life for its citizens.
Are you talking about like the climate action plan, or I know the concept of smart cities, which goes into broadband, and Wi-Fi hotspots and so on. But are you talking about the climate action plan?
No, climate action plan would be under sustainability, under the next one. I was thinking, I think our smart city plan has been focused around technology. But there's many ways to innovate. So it's not a necessary topic.
This Commissioner Strong, I actually like that topic. And I think it's probably going to expand even more and more into the future as people get more innovative around things like smart street lights and like the traffic impacts and how they're actually using the data to measure the traffic impacts. And so I think it's important. And I don't know if maybe we put it under sustainability. Maybe it's technology and sustainability, because it kind of does feel like a stretch under resiliency. So maybe it's a combination of technology and sustainability, because technology does kind of drive some of those sustainability efforts as well.
I like that. Okay, so that would leave economic vitality, or economic development, we can call it that. And then the fiscal under, we can look, and you can, happy to hear your thoughts on maybe a different topic or another name for resiliency with these 2 topics, economic development and fiscal. Okay, the next topic, sustainability or technology and sustainability. Just so you know what staff's working on right now, an appendices to the growth management implementation plan is the equitable or air quality improvement plan. And it's a bit of a misnomer because there are some other items like energy conservation addressed under there. So what I'd like to do is work with our sustainability group and conservation group on our whole climate. We have a city has approved climate action plan, and instead of just air quality, which was the only topic that was covered before, is how can we look at all of the topics that would come under sustainability. I don't believe you all have been reviewing or just having much discussion about climate action plan.
This is Kim. Just to clarify a little bit, we did modify the air quality threshold and topic a few years ago, and we did an update and we named it air quality and climate protection. So we've just started to get into greenhouse gas emissions and things like that. Yeah, and so some of the questions on the current questionnaire do go into that type of those topics. And then, as you know, Kim, we get a lot of good feedback from the sustainability department, which is, I think, why you want to expand on this. We want to make sure that it's more highlighted because it really hasn't been in the past. So.
Right. And they right now are working on an update of the climate, or I think it's more of a report on how they're doing on the climate action plan. So there's some really good plans in place that just aren't seeing the light of day that I think would be great for this commission to look at every year and see what progress is being made and make recommendations. Any thoughts from the commissioners on this one? Health and wellness, fairly new topic. You heard Tracy Lamb, the community services director, talk about how this is a big focus of their department now. And even the rec building that Patricia Furman presented, where they're remodeling it. I think they're looking at even calling it potentially a wellness center. And we are doing things in the area of aging, and we have a Healthy Chula Vista Advisory Commission that Kim and I are going to be meeting with the staff liaison there, and also would like to engage their commission, see what type of things they're looking at. And I believe, is anybody else from the commission on that Healthy Chula Vista from this commission? No. Access to health care is an important topic. Some cities look at health metrics like obesity and diabetes and things like that. I don't know if that's something you want to look at. But the healthy aging is something that I know the Community Services Department has been focused on, as well as the Healthy Chula Vista Commission, and what we can be doing for our aging senior population. Any thoughts on this one?
Yes, this is Commissioner Alatorre.
Mm-hmm.
So in regards to the health and wellness, I just want to see something incorporated along the lines with what our governor had just declared or announced that I guess California is going to now be in the business of generating its own generic medications. So I want to explore that possibility of the city somehow incorporating this new avenue of healthcare into its residents.
Okay, I believe there's some representatives from Sharp and Scripps on the commission, the Healthy Chula Vista Commission. We can ask about that. I'm going to guess, though, that something like medications is outside of the city's purview, but we can definitely talk to the health experts on that and see what they're doing in this area.
And
There's
Commissioner
definitely-
Alatorre, you are a pharmacist, are you not?
Any other thoughts on any of the topics?
Kim, I think we lost your sound again.
Oh, shoot.
I can hear you.
You're back.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. So next meeting, I've invited our new city manager, Maria
hold
on.
Dorian.
Hi, this is Mike.
Mike, yes.
I lost track as we've been talking a long time here. Did we do the 2-minute public comment version or link for this?
Not for this particular agenda item yet.
We need to do that.
Okay.
So let's do it.
Are we done on this topic to move on to comments?
Yeah, I didn't think we were done on the topic yet.
Unless you all have anything else, I'm done.
Okay. I will
Right.
now call
Thank-
for a 2-minute pause to allow for public comment to submit any final comments on the action item before the commission. As a reminder, please refresh your view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
Staff presenter, please display public timer.
The comment period for this item is now closed. I did not see any comments.
I did not receive any via email.
Okay. Other business, do we have any staff comments?
I was just going to say for the next meeting, I've invited the new city manager
I
to, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
The new city manager, Maria Cachadorian, to
Yes.
say hello and give maybe, I don't know if she will have her formal goals in place by then, but certainly she can address this commission and your work. So we're looking forward to that. And then Kim will also, as she said earlier, will be bringing the draft questionnaires for the FY 2020 report.
Okay, any other staff
That's all
comments? Kim? Nope.
I do not have any.
Okay. I don't have any comments as chair.
No,
Any
sir.
commissioner have comments?
Yes, this is Commissioner Alatorre. I have a comment.
Go ahead.
So, so this is related to the commissioners on the growth management, and for Kim. So, as you all know, I've been the representative for the GMOC on the Citizens Oversight Committee, Measure A, since its inception, and I feel that due to my schedule and really don't have the dedicated time to be on that committee anymore, even though I love being there. It was a great opportunity. But at this point, I feel that it's time to pass that on to somebody else. So I know we have some missing commissioners here tonight, but I was wondering if we could have that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes,
Basically-
we could definitely add that.
Yeah.
Does he need to put anything formal to resign from that commission, or is that good enough, Kim?
Also, that's
Have you been in touch with the clerk's office at all, Commissioner Alatorre?
Vaguely, a lot of just messaging back and forth. Nothing confirmed.
also, Kim, isn't that position a council appointment?
Okay. Okay. Brad,
Yes.
um,
So is that something you could
I
direct
would have
council,
to double
or I can
check.
follow up?
Yeah, because you were interviewed, weren't you?
Yes, but it was based on the appointment through GMOC, right? It wasn't
We'll
there
check
like a
with
selection
the
process?
clerk's office.
Yeah, Kim, if I remember right, it was
Yes. I believe that 2 people were nominated.
Right.
right.
Two or 3 of you were nominated and then interviewed, and then council or the clerk's office made the final determination.
But so we can put that on the agenda for, let's say,
So what we'd probably have to do
nominations.
then,
We would need to renominate 2 more people.
nominations.
Right. So if we have that on the agenda, make that aware to the
Yes.
other commissioners that are not here today.
Kim, this is Mike. Follow up with the city clerk on this issue.
Yes.
There may be a procedure in place. And then you could report back to the
Definitely.
commission. I mean, the procedure might be
Will
put
do.
it on.
Thank you.
Yeah, the procedure might be put it on the agenda. You know, it might be something else, and then it wouldn't go on the agenda, but you would just report back what the clerk says. But that needs to get checked with the city clerk.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
There. Yep. Definitely. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have comments?
Yeah, my question is for Miss Elliott. This is Commissioner Cadillo. I just wanted to follow up on my question from the last meeting regarding the questions I submitted late last year regarding the roles and duties and functions of the GMOC. Did we make any headway on that?
I'll let Mr. Shire respond to that.
Yeah, hi, this is Mike. Staff did make some headway, it seems. And I was just notified today about that headway, and it's something I need to take a look at. And we will work that in due course.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, guys.
All right, you're welcome.
Any other comments?
Great meeting.
Okay, I adjourn the meeting, our regular meeting of 3 September. And our next meeting will be on 17 September at 6 p.m.
Everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank
you,
you.
everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.